In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Good morning to Joan and Lynn. Good morning. And Helia. Good morning. Now, I don't know what this crown means. What does it mean? Why have you all got crowns? Joan has got a crown with number 1 on it. Lynn and Helia crowns the number 2 in it. So none of this makes any sense to me. I don't know what it means. Maybe you do. Let me write something in here and see if I get a crown. Oh, look, Lisa's got a crown too. Hi. Oops. Hi, everyone. Let's see if I get a crown. No! What a world. Never mind. Maybe if somebody knows why we get crowns, you can let me know. It's a new thing, and I don't know where it's come from. Right. Today it's a sort of coolish day outside. Overcast, cloudy, but apparently we're not likely to get so much in the way of rain as we've had recently, which is interesting. There have been some absolute downpours. Amazingly, just a cloudburst really. Yesterday or the day before, I was traveling through Lincoln, and it went from huge floods across the road and great torrents of water pouring down the road and coming up through the various gratings and things, to being absolutely as dry as a bone. Don't understand that. There we go. And look, Bev. Good morning, Bev. And Bev does not have a crown. Bev, I think you need to make a formal complaint. Okay, today we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 to verse 31. We've already had, if I read it in context, so I'll go back a verse or two so you can see what we came on from. So second part of day 6. So just go back and have a look at our chart. Here is the famous chart. The creation story is divided or apportioned into 6 bits, and each bit, day 1, day 2, day 3, you have the regions being made, and then each of those regions is then populated. So day 1, you get light and dark. These are populated by sun, moon, and stars. Day 2, we've got the sea and the sky. These are populated by birds and fish. Day 3, dry land. And this is now populated in the morning by all the various land animals, and in the afternoon by humanity. I'm only making up a bit, morning and afternoon. Good morning to Kurt. And we're now here, the second part of day 6. So we're cracking on. Yes, God is cracking on. Also on day 3, of course, vegetation was made. And vegetation is going to be the food for all these living things. Okay, so if I begin, say, at verse 26 and then read to the end, then we're actually going to comment on 27 onwards. Then God said, "Let us make man in our own image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the sea, over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heaven, over cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that moves on the earth." So God made man. In the image of God he made him, male and female he made them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heaven, over every living thing that moves on the earth." Then God said, "Behold, I have given you every seed-bearing herb that sows seed on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. I also give you every green plant as food for all the wild animals of the earth, all the birds of heaven, for everything that creeps on the earth. in which is the breath of life. It was so. Then God saw everything he had made, and indeed it was very good. So evening and morning were the sixth day. There's a dog next door barking, which will make Jolly start to bark in a moment. Hopefully they'll stop in a minute. Okay. So we'll start at verse 27. Verse 27 is poetic. In many Bibles, it's not laid out in a poetic way, but actually in better copies, you can see the poetry within it. And you can sort of hear this poetry even in the English. So I'll read it again, and you can get this idea. Verse 27, so God made man. In the image of God, he made him. Male and female, he made them. So you can see there's like a sort of verse, like a song. And almost certainly, if we go back to the original idea, that this is grandfather telling the children the story, this is something he wants them to know. And therefore, putting it into verse will help them to grab this at a very early stage. Bev, you now have a crown. Suzanne, good morning. Miss Connie, good morning. Rather good evening to you, Miss Connie. Okay, so God made, it says, man. In the Hebrew, it says ha-adam. The ha part there gives the idea of the aforementioned, the one we've already talked about, because in verse 26, God has already made humanity. So God made ha-adam, the aforementioned Adam. Now, Adam, as we said before, means person, okay, person or people. So God made humanity in the image of God, okay? He made him. Now, this idea of being the image of God, we talked about some time ago, last time. But part of the nice, interesting idea about this ha-adam, this humanity being made in the image of God, we have to understand something about Middle Eastern culture at that time. The people of Mesopotamia, they tended to think about their king as being in the image of God, in the way he functions. So he acts and behaves on behalf of God. Even actually, St. Paul says something about this. We must respect the rulers because they're put there by God to rule. Okay, so part of this idea here, how the image of God is about rule to begin with. Now, in Mesopotamian culture, it was only the king who was in the image of God, and everybody else was a slave to the king and a slave to God. Rather, in fact, as you find in Islam now, we have the idea in Christianity that in Christianity we are the children of God, that God loves us, and so on. In the Middle Eastern, and this is a really important difference actually. In Islam, they are slaves of God; they're not children of God. It's a different idea, and that Middle Eastern, Mesopotamian idea of people being slaves to God rather than being co-regents with God is something that is an important distinction between this form of Judaism and modern Christianity and the pagan religions of that time. Okay, so an important distinction. So in their culture, the king was the image of God, but here everybody is designated to be like kings or queens, but rulers. Okay, everybody in this case here has the majesty of being like God. We can think about it as one of the attributes of a human being, about being in the image and likeness of God, is God is clearly of infinite importance and humanity also of infinite importance. Each individual person having this majesty of infinite value. And when somebody has infinite value, the loss of one person is a tragedy of immense scale. So we wake up this morning to discover that in Syria, something like 1,700 people have been murdered on the coastline of Syria in the last couple of days. And with each one of those, we have an infinite tragedy, infinite, where somebody has not recognized the majesty of God within that person and has taken it upon themselves to destroy. And in that destruction, they have destroyed at least 1,400 infinitely important beings, people. It's horrific. Not just there, of course, but also if you think about Israel and Gaza, not just there, but all over the place, Sudan, Afghanistan, everywhere, horrific things going on like that. Okay, it also is why it is that when somebody is in danger, lots of other people put themselves in danger to rescue that person who is in danger. Because if everybody had a value of, say, 1, then if one person is in danger and 5 people go and risk their lives to save that person, then this is obviously an absurd thing to do. It is better not to do that. But if everybody is of infinite value, then it makes perfect sense for 5 infinite beings to go and rescue 1 infinite being, because there is no sort of equation there that makes the 5 more important than the 1. Okay? Oof. So God made people in the image of God. He made him. And again, this is sort of plural him, the idea of all of these hymns being made. So it's rather like they used to say mankind rather than humankind. And all men on earth, meaning not just male men, but male and female men. And then it makes this clear in the next phrase, male and female, he made them. Okay, so here we don't have the idea of any sort of androgynous being as they had in some of the Greek and Egyptian myths and stories about creation and Middle Eastern stories, where people were made androgynous and then divided in half to make male and female, and then you spent your time looking for your other half. Here we have humanity being made male and female right the way from the very beginning. Okay, so a pretty important idea. So humanity is also essentially divided, male, female, not male-ish, female-ish, but male, female. And this, in this narration, continues this theme of things being divided. So the division, you remember, between dark and light, day and night, between the abyss above and the abyss below, the firmament above and the firmament below. So the waters above, the waters below, up and down. And then, of course, sea and land, so dry and wet. And this idea of dividing, making a division between 2 things continues even to this point. So male and female, he made them. Okay, and then you notice there that it's male and female, he made them, not one male, one female. Otherwise, we would have said each of them or something like that. But it's the idea of God making a population. So there's a population of people being made, and they are male and female. In chapter 2, there's a different type of story being told, and a different point is being made. But in this story here, we have a population of males and population of females being made. Okay, so that's verse 27. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heaven, over every living thing that moves on the earth." So let's have a look at each of those bits again. So the first one is, I can see Natalia and David have turned up, and Atle, God bless you all. Be fruitful and multiply. So mainly this means go and breed. Just like in verse 22, the birds and the fish are blessed to go and breed. This be fruitful and multiply part is not just restricted to human beings, it is also a blessing given to all land creatures, which means we have something in common with all other land creatures. We know this from science as well. Okay, we share a certain nature with all the rest of the living creation. Now, this be fruitful and multiply is an important thing. You might say, well, what about you, Father Philip? You're not fulfilling this rule to be fruitful and multiply because you did not get married and you have no children. And that is quite true. But it is not just about having children. It is about acting in a parental way to everything and everyone around you. So we act in this fecund and increase manner towards everything. So you might have a garden. The garden itself, you exercise your dominion upon the garden in order to make it fruitful and better than you found it. You act in a parental way towards your home and towards your street and towards your village or town or city in a parental way so that it becomes better, more beautiful, more fruitful, and more like an Eden place to live in. So even when we are marrying two very ancient people, let's say a man of 90 and a woman of 90, it is unlikely they're going to have children, and yet we still pray for them that their marriage will be fruitful and that she will bear children just like Rebecca, and so goes on, and Leah, etc., etc. Now, what do we really mean by that? So again, it is this fruitfulness towards the whole of creation around them. So an elderly couple like that, or a couple who cannot have children, can, or a young person, anybody for that matter, a child, a baby, needs to be brought into this world with the idea that all of their actions need to multiply the good things on the earth and create fruitfulness either from themselves or elsewhere. So a child in school can be fruitful by attending their lessons, learning things, understanding better within the world, being kind to the other people in their classes, being good and so on. All that multiplies and makes fruitful their own life. Okay, I was quite clear really. You might, how do you say be fruitful and multiply if you're working in a supermarket? Well, again, kindness and thoughtfulness to the people who are buying things there, reciprocated, hopefully, and a decent, joyful attitude to the people around you will bring that same joyfulness to them. In work, all of us should do our work to the best of our ability. In our families, we need to be, obviously, some people are fruitful and multiply and actually have a lot of children, or some children. The way we bring these children up is also about being fruitful and multiplying creation on this world. Okay? So we act not just by having children, but acting in this parental role towards the whole of creation, bringing more fruit and more beauty, more peace, and so on within it. Being fruitful in the spirit, yes, indeed. Multiplying and exercising our talents. Well, here we have Joan as a good example. If you get onto Instagram, look up Joan's Instagram site, you'll see that she exercises her ability in fruitfulness and multiplication on things like wheat and eggs and stuff like this, and produces the most incredible, beautiful creations of cakes that people then use to make their lives joyful. You know, if you there's something about a cake in a celebration, a baptism or a wedding or a birthday, or just a joyful thing. We're all here together. In Joan's case, they are works of art. And then the cutting into the cake and sharing it with other people brings joy and stability and unity and preciousness to each of the people who are there. So that is an example of being fruitful and multiplying. Okay? And then it also says, fill and subdue the earth. This, again, the whole world is there for humanity to explore and discover and bring into a sort of tameness towards human beings. Fruitful cake, Natalia. Bring fruitful. Okay, and again, it's this exercise of royal, majestic rule over creation. So making creation multiply and making use of it in a way that nurtures and increases it and tames it and brings it into that sort of human God ambit. So God makes humanity the vice regents on earth, the vice regents of God. Now, a good ruler does not destroy his or her country. A good ruler is there to nurture, increase, and make beautiful the country. Okay, not destroy it, but to bring it into ever greater completion. And this is how we should be acting all around us. So, you know, if I think about what I do, what is my business? Well, all sorts of things, really. I have a certain amount of authority given to me by others as a priest and by God as a priest. I don't use this or abuse this to make me grand. It is there for me to empty myself in order to display God to other people, and so that they can have that closeness with God in communion that we all desperately actually need. Okay? The other thing about blessing is you'll notice that the blessing is given to be fruitful and multiply, not just to human beings, but animals and to fish and birds, which of course are animals too. So this blessing is an interesting idea. So when a priest or a parent blesses somebody, we're enabling them to be fruitful and multiply. So I might say to somebody, may God bless you. By this, I'm asking God to give that person the ability to live a fruitful life, to act in a fruitful manner. Okay? And then we have to go off and be fruitful. Okay. We'll read verses 29 and 30 all in one go. A.E., God bless you and keep you. Everybody else now talking about cake. Yum, says Joan. And also vanilla cake with whipped cream and berries. On a Wednesday? God bless you and keep you. That sounds delicious. My mouth is now watering. And see how easily I'm led astray. Then God said, word then is put in English. God said, behold, I have given you every seed-bearing herb that sows seed upon the face of all the earth, every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Also I give every green plant as food, for all the wild animals of the earth, all the birds of the heaven, for everything that creeps on the earth, in which is the breath of life. It was so. So again, we go back to this idea which we saw on day 3, that plants in their Stone Age science were not seen to be alive. They were emanations from the earth. So humanity and animals and all these creeping things, everything else, are to eat plants. They all have the breath of life. Plants don't have, in the Stone Age science, the breath of life. We know more about it now than we did then. Interesting way that they thought about what we consider to be all living creatures. Definitely plants and things, they just emanated out of the earth. They're not alive in the same manner. And then it says, it was so. And again, this is shown to be a sort of act of creation. God created it like this. It was so. And this is one of the reasons why it is that in monastic societies, particularly, there tends to be at least vegetarianism, and on Wednesdays and Fridays and Lent and other fast days, we return to the diet of Eden. In other words, it is vegan. And we show ourselves and everybody else that our desire is to be back in the Garden of Eden by fasting. It's an important consideration, important way of reminding ourselves, Wednesdays like today, Fridays like the day after tomorrow, and during fast days like the upcoming fast of Dormition, that we are heading back towards the Garden of Delight, back towards Eden, where there is no bloodshed, where there's no death. And obviously, if we're going to be eating all sorts of animals, then you're causing their death. Again, this has the same idea of plants not being alive in the same way as, say, fish and spiders and sheep are. But it's interesting, this idea, it was so. God says, and that's what happens. There's no further sort of act of creation. It just happened that particular way. Now, in humanity, it's slightly different in chapter 2. It was so. Verse 31. Then God saw everything he had made, and indeed it was very good. Now evening and morning were the 6th day. So the idea of this, of God seeing, is God surveying all the various things that he's now made. He has said these things, so everything from the light, the dark, the sky, the waters, the land, the sea, the vegetation, the sun, the moon, the stars, birds, fish, land animals, and finally the crown of creation, mankind, humanity. God looks at the whole thing, and with this final act of creation, God sees it is very good. Until now, each of these things have been declared good. And now the children sitting around the campfire with Grandad, they know that with the creation of themselves, that everything becomes very good. Now, I think this is something we need to hang on to within the church. A lot of people now think of people, other people, and themselves as being the problem, the environmental problem. The problem on earth is humanity. And there's some people even choosing not to have children on the grounds that the fewer children there are, the better it is for the world as a whole. And certainly, even over my lifetime, the average number of children born to families has dramatically decreased. So a family of 4, like I was born into, would nowadays be seen, certainly in England, as being quite a sizable family. Whereas my great-great-great-grandmother only had 18 children, and her husband's mother only had 22 children. This was seen to be, in both cases, a large family, but not astonishingly large. Nowadays, I think people would think this was astonishingly large. Thankfully for them, they were well off and they could afford to bring up all of these children in some comfort. But nowadays, people might have a couple of kids, and even then, most people, very frequently, people having one child and lavishing possibly far too much attention on that child. Okay? Think about, we just need to think about that. That's one thing. Second thing about that is there's not a single human being who comes into this world without that human being being in the image and likeness of God, whoever they are. So however the person is conceived, once they are conceived, this person is a child beloved by God, created in the image and likeness of God. And therefore we do have strong reasons to protect that child, certainly from implantation onwards, for the rest of her or his life until they're elderly. Therefore, there are things that the world around us in this country are now practicing and suggesting and making legal that are not possible for us who are Christian. Therefore, we need to protect the unborn child, and we need to protect the elderly and the infirm and the sick and those in need. There is more than a movement. It is now legal in this country to abort children very late on in pregnancy. I believe even in certain cases during childbirth. And it is going to be legal to have doctors put to sleep elderly and sick people certainly, like you might put down a dog or a cat that is now ill. We'll put them out of our misery rather than put them out of their misery. This is because it's probably cheaper to do that than invest in hospices where those people could be nurtured and cared for, and where we ourselves could exercise our own nurturing parental role. And certainly there are plenty of people wanting to adopt, and the big problem is no children to adopt. And that's because there is a holocaust of children every year in this country and throughout the world. Okay? There are places on this earth where more children are aborted than born. But when God saw creation, he called it Tov Me'ud, very good, including all the people that are born on it. So we cannot allow ourselves to withdraw from this idea of the simple, straightforward, infinite value of every human being. Next thing to say about that is that human beings are not part of the problem. The exercising majestic rule over creation does not mean the rape and pillage of creation. The exercise of majestic rule over creation is a nurturing, protecting, it is a symbolic one, by which I mean finding meaning within creation. It is something by which we then unite creation in our bodies to God, in the same way as God unites us to him through communion. And we therefore have to exercise that kingly rule and help other people to exercise that majestic rule within creation as well. In that God made humanity in the image and likeness of God, we find within this something else that's very important. And that is that normally people think of humanity as being part of creation. Okay? But in that we are in the image and likeness of God, it is a better way to think about creation, that creation is a part of ourselves. So if you were to ask a pagan will find meaning by looking at creation. For a Christian, we look at it the other way around. Creation finds meaning by looking to humanity. And by understanding what it means to be a human being, then all of creation comes into order. The pagan idea is exactly the opposite. And this opposite of finding meaning by looking at creation is the antithesis of the way that Christianity looks at it. Okay? So we don't rape or pillage creation. We see it for what it is, which is the most majestic and beautiful, wonderful temple that suggests to us the majesty of God. And we ourselves exercise that majesty in creation also. Okay? I think we should end there, as it's now 10:39. And I'll just look to see if anybody's been saying anything that we need to say. So, Joan vanilla cake. AE says could be vegan cream. Natalia says most types of cake can be very nice if they're made by an expert. Joan says I'm always very kind to her about her work. Thank you. Oh, I have good reason to be kind about your work, Joan, because I have tasted the fruits of your work in a delicious chocolate cake that I then took back and I shared with a large number of very hungry seminarians in Ballamand, all of whom, there's a fasting chocolate cake too, all of whom were extremely grateful for your expertise. Setama, good morning. God bless you. Maria Dana Bagu, good morning. Pray for your son Philip, indeed. He still needs wisdom and mental health. He's accusing, has a mental disease. Thank you very much. Well, God bless you, Maria Dana. That's very tricky. But we will indeed pray for Philip. And Simon is praying for you, and I think possibly laughing at something I said. Sabina says, I want to share by the grace of God. I was freed. I used to hear and see things, had night terrors. When I was prayed over, felt a warm whip on my back. The bad things disappeared. Thank God. Amen. Natalia says quite a lot. It's heartbreaking to see the most vulnerable lives being sacrificed at the altar of the consumerist, individualist convenience. Ooh, big words. Yes, but I agree it is. But this is part of our economic model and a joined materialist culture, a worldview to its logical conclusion, holding no meaning or value past what pleases me at this moment. Yeah. Lynn says, artificial intelligence informs that the crowns and numbers are a chat comment leaderboard. I'm not quite sure what that means, Lynn. Maybe you can explain to me. Sabina says, I was going to a psychiatrist in therapy on pills for years. They said I was healthy, did not know what was wrong. 5 years of medical route, which is always the way. God still cures. God does indeed still cure. I'm glad he has helped you. Right, on that note, we need to pray for others. We'll pray for Philip to begin with and his needs. And also, if you pray for Mirella, Anton, who joins us quite often and who wishes us a happy Wednesday or happy little Friday on Thursdays and so on. He has asked us to pray for the daughter of a friend of his in Greece. The friend's daughter is called Mirella. Mirella is 5 years old. She is having a lot of treatment at the moment and is really quite poorly. And a lot of this involves blood tests and so on. This little girl is frightened of the needles. So if you could pray for Mirella and for Philip. We're also, of course, praying for Virginie, Peter. Oh, not any longer for Peter. We were praying and for Hector, for Nicoletta, for Daniel, for Hilary, who has made fantastic recovery and is now said to be free of cancer. So thank God for that. So keep her in our prayers and keep on. There's obviously the effects of chemotherapy and operations, all the rest of it still needs to be recovered from. For Joseph, for Dina's Simon, for Carol, for Georgia, and for Jane. Georgia also has got a pretty virulent cancer. We're also praying for David, who is exceedingly ill and in his last days. So if you could please pray for them as well. Dear YouTube, first you recommend me a Salafist sheikh calling for jihad, then a rabbi saying Cain was a lizard person, now an Anglo-Orthodox priest. I'm Antiochian Orthodox actually. What is going on? What are you going to do? What are you doing with your life, dear? What are you doing with your life? My suggestion to you is this. You switch off YouTube or you put on some nice soothing music and you go and make yourself a nice cup of chamomile tea. Or if you can't do that, then something like a really delicious cup of Assam tea or some Indian tea, which will buck you up. Okay? Meanwhile, Sam, God bless you and keep you. Right, everybody? Have a lovely day, and God willing, we shall see you again tomorrow. Okay? Hello, Nick. God bless you as well. Righto. God bless you and keep you.